Ellis Island and the Statue of Liberty are visited by approximately 4.5 million people every year. But somehow I have never been, so join me, if you dare. I'm the Ghost Tourist, and this is New York Harbor. Prior to 1890, New York State immigration was located at Castle Garden in Battery Park. But a change in immigration law, plus massive political, religious, and economic upheaval in Europe, led to the establishment of a new station on Ellis Island. So, we're hopping on board a statue cruise and headed across the harbor to Ellis and Liberty Islands. I've heard a lot of rumors over the years about Ellis Island being super haunted. In particular, the old immigration hospital, which we are going to have access to. So, I'm very curious to see what we find. Ellis Island began receiving arrivals on January 1st, 1892. Over the 62-year course of its history, it saw 12 million men, women, and children pass through its doors. First and second class passengers were never required to step foot on the island unless they had fallen ill at sea. But third class steerage passengers needed to present their paperwork and pass a physical inspection. Steerage was so crammed, there was barely room for the passengers to stand. And with no ventilation, disease ran rampant, and the sanitary conditions were abysmal. Doctors at Ellis Island soon became notorious for conducting 6-second physicals, and it was said that a doctor could identify numerous medical conditions ranging from anemia to tuberculosis by simply glancing at a person. Though the actual length of these physicals averaged a whopping 30 seconds. Historical accounts recall a lot of noise, a great din of a dozen-plus languages being spoken all at once, lines that were hours long, children crying, emotions running high, women coming from the old country to marry men they had never met, families fleeing oppression, everyone anxiously waiting to begin new lives on strange soil. Only 2% of the arriving immigrants were excluded from entry, and those with physical or mental health concerns were sent here to the Ellis Island Immigration Hospital. And some of them never left. Today, we're taking a hard hat tour of the abandoned buildings with a non-profit organization called Save Ellis Island. All proceeds go towards preserving these crumbling pieces of history. Any patient who was suspected of being ill was marked with a white chalk symbol on the label of their coat and led down this hall. PG meant pregnant, and X meant mentally unwell. If you were marked with an X, you were taken to a fenced-in psych ward for further observation. Thousands of unfortunate souls perished at the hospital, especially in times of epidemic. A disproportionate amount were children under the age of 13, and every death required an autopsy, which was a very unpopular law. However, the island hosted medical college students who would come to observe and learn. Sick children were also quarantined alone without their families. This window depicts children infected with Favis, a severe scalp infection. It wasn't deadly, but rather horrific because back in the day, it was treated by covering their scalps with tar, wrapping them with cloth, allowing the tar to harden, and then ripping it off. However, in other ways, the hospital was advanced for its time, practicing social distancing, sterilizing mattresses, and isolating communicable disease patients into separate wards. You could tell how dangerous a disease was by the thickness of the ward doors and the size of the windows embedded within.
After World War I, U.S. embassies were established around the world, and the necessary paperwork and medical inspections were completed at the consulate, replacing the Ellis Island inspection process. When the hospital closed in 1930, everything was abandoned. The facility was left unlocked, leaving furniture and medical equipment exposed to the elements. After decades of neglect, the buildings were emptied and special vented windows were installed. But today, the walls are crumbling. Everything made of metal is brown with rust, and dotted throughout, you'll find haunting black and white illustrations by the French artist J.R.
This is the only room that feels unsettling for some reason. I had some weird tech glitches on the camera, and I asked the guide, and he said recently a CBS crew filmed here, and a woman reported a shadow figure crossing by her in this very ward.
Suffice it to say, this place has a heavy vibe, and thousands upon thousands of witness reports detail phantom voices, unexplained noises, and paranormal encounters. The guide was hesitant to expand on the hauntings, but did remark that a ghost hunter from Connecticut had once told him that the spirits are happy not to be forgotten, and enjoy the attention paid to them by the visitors.
I felt like I really got to step back in time on this tour. Abandoned places are such fascinating record keepers of our history. It was such a powerful and truly haunting experience. It may take you a few extra hours, but I highly, highly recommend taking the Save Ellis Island Hardhead tour.
And now for our final stop on the tour. Lady Liberty.
That's so crazy. It's really like non-stop helicopters swirling around out here.
But for the luckier 98% of immigrants who passed through the harbor, the Statue of Liberty symbolized hope and a promise of freedom. Originally pitched and designed by Frenchman Edouard de la Belle, after a tremendous amount of fundraising and 2 decades of international teamwork, Lady Liberty was finally dedicated on October 28, 1886.
And it wasn't long before the locals began to whisper that the statue was possessed.
A fascinating New York Journal article from 1896 stated, "The Statue of Liberty is tenanted by ghosts." At least that is what the rivermen claim. They say that as the witching hour of night approaches, most unearthly noises are heard as if the statue were possessed. Many a folk yarn has been spun about the midnight carnival of spirits within the goddess. The writer goes on to explain that there is a scientific explanation for the loud racket. The statue is made of copper and bronze plates riveted together, and over time, due to exposure to the elements, the rivets loosen.
During the day, the sun causes the metal to expand.
And at night, the overlapping sections have a gentle contraction, almost as if she were drawing her robes more closely around her against the evening chill.
And the sound produces a pretty creepy groan that echoes through the hollow interior.
Here's another excerpt from that same article. Several watchmen had preferred to give up their positions rather than listen to these remarkable object lessons in acoustics. They could not be persuaded that the mysterious figure was not haunted, and all said that they had never in their lives heard of any haunted house which could boast half as many hair-raising noises as the dignified goddess. The sound of hollow groans, accompanied by weird rattlings and other uncanny noises, has frightened more than one superstitious sailor as he floated across the dark waters. Thanks for watching. If you want to help the channel grow, please consider becoming a Patreon supporter.